Okay, so I haven't done hashtag Ask Lauren in a while. And I'm cutting back on how many videos I'm posting, if you haven't heard, just because I'm overwhelmed and I have too much work to do with the cookbook. And I'm trying to do 2 days a week on this channel, but it honestly might not happen. I have basically 5 months to do over 100 recipes and shoot them and write a book, which is insane. So I'm not really sure. I'm having a bit of a freak about that in the last few days. So I've just started working on it. Anyways, I'm trying to keep up, but I can't. I'll be honest with you. So I'm gonna tape a few of these ahead of time. Just Keep Writing 101 basically wanted me to talk about what I like about living in Canada. Likes and dislikes versus the US. Have you ever wanted to move to the US or another country? I live in the Bay Area. Who would want to move? But I'm seriously considering moving to Canada in the next 10 years. Canada versus America. Well, I risk basically being assassinated by saying anything that I truly believe. Because anytime you talk shit about someone, where they live, whatever, they like lose their mind. So just relax. But living in Canada is amazing, and I would say the more that I travel, the more I appreciate Canada, and the more I realize that this is probably the best place to live, just in terms of our freedoms. And in a way, now this is going to sound weird, but in a way, in kind of our ignorance. Like, being in Canada is a little bit like being the young little sibling that doesn't really know what's going on in the family. I feel like that's what we're kind of like when it comes to any world issue, especially things going on in the US. I feel like the US gets hit the hardest when it comes to issues of injustice and racism and all of these things. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist in Canada, because it does. But sometimes it does feel like we're a little bit sheltered, and that certain things going on in the world don't immediately affect the really kind of amazing existence we're able to live in this country. So that's kind of how I first initially feel about Canada. I'm really lucky that I live here. I like living here, and I feel like when I worked in television, I took it for granted, because the whole sort of idea was to always like move to the US, or like everyone else's kind of ideas and perceptions of working in television as a TV host was like, well, you got to go across the border, you got to go to LA or New York, or like work in the big time or whatever. And I always was like, I don't think I really want to do that, but I always thought I had to. I'm definitely glad I didn't pursue that. I feel like, even having just been in New York, like living in New York is fucking hard. It's just harder there. It feels harder. It feels hardened. It feels, there's that saying, like, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's really New York. I couldn't make it there. It's too difficult to live there. Just like finding apartments. I had friends that lived there, and they had the most nightmare of stories that they've shared with me. And I just feel like it's super hard to like move there and then feel like safe, secure, like you could actually survive financially, like all these things. Obviously, lots of you are doing it, and I'm sure it's great, but it's just not for me. And I used to think I wanted to do that a few years ago, and my best friend moved to New York, and he did it. And once he did it and told me what it was like, I was like, oh no, I really don't want to live there. And then every time I visit, I don't want to live there. I just don't. You know how clean Canada is? Like, I don't know if any of you have ever visited Canada or anywhere in Canada, specifically Toronto, which is like the biggest city in Canada. It's not dirty. Like, it's very clean. And that's kind of a nice luxury. And that's something I notice every time I travel anywhere else, especially in the US. It's just not clean. It's just dirt. There's just garbage. Everything's older. Of course, we're like a newer city. We're a newer country. There's like, everything's more newly developed. But so anyways, I like that stuff about living here. I'm not somebody who is like deeply invested in politics and like knows exactly what's going on, but I do feel like in terms of politics, we're in a pretty good position right now, having Justin Trudeau as our prime minister, and I think it's off. I think we're off and running. I think if we start to kind of form more of our own separate identity. I mean, it's obviously impossible because we're attached to the United States of America, but I think having a new PM, a liberal PM, and keeping ourselves, obviously we can't keep ourselves separate. I don't know if you really understand what I mean by that, but I just like Canada, sometimes you're always kind of trying to figure out what is Canada's identity. And as long as we don't try and identify as Americans or try to identify as Europeans, we are our own place. And I really feel like there is sort of our own mentality or like culture or whatever. And sometimes it's even a bit aloof. You know how like people make fun of Canadians on like Family Guy or like South Park? We are kind of like that. I'm not gonna deny it, and I kind of like it. We're not like the target for anything, if you know what I mean. So, it's good. Do we want all of the Americans to move here? No, we'd run out of space, and then we'd become like America. But I'm certainly not envious of what's going on right now in your country with the election coming up. But I don't think Trump's gonna win. But the fact that he's even in the running is a terrible thing, and I think the world's going to hell. That's Canada versus America. But you know, America has a lot of perks, like I mentioned in my New York vlog. You can buy liquor anywhere, which I think is a great perk. I think, not even a perk, I just think if it's unregulated, people are more responsible. But when you regulate things and you put lots of rules around things, people abuse things. So I just wish it wasn't regulated. The alcohol and liquor is controlled by our government, so you can only buy it at a Liquor Control Board of Ontario location. The only province where you can buy it anywhere is Quebec, because they don't have those laws. Of course, opportunity and like the ability to make more money exists in the US for like certain jobs and careers. I would love to live in California, like where it's warm all the time. I don't really care for the Canadian winters or the snow. It's not my thing, but you know, I don't see myself moving anywhere else, to be honest. Maybe temporarily, like, you know, doing like the winters in Los Angeles or something like that. And my irrational fear, although it is going to happen, of the tsunami engulfing all of LA, and eventually New York's going to be underwater. Well, we're pretty safe right here in Toronto. So my bigger forethought plan is that I'm staying here because I don't want to get wiped out by the natural disasters that are coming. Like, legitimately. Anyway, okay, thanks for watching. That's hashtag Ask Lauren. Leave more questions in the comments below with hashtag Ask Lauren so I can search and find them. And just be patient with me here on this channel because it is going to go through a bit of neglect while I work on this cookbook. And also pray to the gods for me that I can get through this project. I'm basically just giving it up to the universe and praying that I have the strength and the willpower and the motivation to do it. Because right now, I'm not feeling like I am. But it's not up to me. I wouldn't have been given this opportunity if I couldn't do it. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with that. All right, peace out. See you later.